I want to introduce our guest tonight.
Yeah, why not?
Scott. I was going to say, beam me up, Scotty. But you'll talk about that later. Scott Ritsema.
Yeah.
Digital Disconnect is a program we have here on 3ABN. Good to have you here again.
Yeah,
it's so good to be back with you. And it's an uneventful arrival here, which has not always been the case. We should talk about that tonight, about some of the times I've come to 3ABN and hit some hiccups on the way.
Okay.
The devil does not like what's going on here. I can tell you that for sure. But especially when we're talking about media, we did the Digital Disconnect, the expose on what the entertainment industry is up to and how the devil's capturing a generation with addiction and many problems, but God's answers and solutions. So it's so good to be back here. It's been a couple of years, but good to see your faces again.
Do you have a family?
We do, yeah. In fact, the family's here this time. They're in the guest apartments, and so my wife and 3 children are over there. Yeah.
How old are they?
12 and 10 and 6.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were able to practice some of the things that you talk about.
Right.
Helping your family in a healthy way.
Yeah, I mean, you'd better practice what you preach.
That's right.
So yeah, and it's not so much what my kids don't get to do.
Right.
That's sometimes the wrong mindset when it comes to media. It's what are the better things that we're doing instead? Nature and play and family time and projects and Legos and books and musical instruments and service and grandparents and climbing trees and endless life, right? Media gets in the way of that sometimes. And media is a tool. We're using it right now.
Right.
But yeah, there are problems in our media library these days.
That's right. Now, where do you live presently?
Live in Michigan. So up in the middle of the mitten, up there, near Cedar Lake, if you know the middle of the state, north of Grand Rapids and Lansing, if you know the names of the big cities in Michigan. So we live up north. We're blessed to live on 13 acres in the country and just God's blessing. So the beauty of creation. This time of year, the colors are changing. They've changed, and we're a little bit past prime on the colors, but we left right at one of the most beautiful days, just basking in God's goodness and glory and creative power. So yeah, we live up there and enjoy home education and gardening, and the kids have their tractors. You know, they work on, my boys age 10 and 12, they're working on their little mower tractors and fixing engines and all kinds of projects that we can have together. Little pond we can jump in. So we're beyond blessed in God's creation.
So Belt of Truth Ministries, tell us about that.
Belt of Truth Ministries was founded in 2012, 2013 officially organized, but we started with the Media on the Brain seminar in 2012 and then formed ourselves as a ministry. And people will wonder, what are you going to call yourselves? Because we were doing camp meetings and visiting churches, and this message was spreading out and about. Well, it's Media on the Brain, of course, right? But we felt led to make sure the name was vague and general enough that we could go other directions than just doing media seminars. So we do parenting seminars. We do a lot of, I just finished a prophecy series. I love doing evangelism, just like Pastor John, the evangelist on the other side of this table from me. Learned a lot from. And so, you know, it's Belt of Truth. I mean, we all believe in truth.
Amen.
The way, the truth, and the life. Jesus Christ is the center of everything. So on our logo is the cross, a little focus on the cross as a camera lens. Image.
I like that because so many people have Jesus, but truth is kind of an optional thing. It's a word nowadays that's kind of been modified, pushed out. What is truth? Kind of like what is truth? And thank you for focusing on that and championing Christ at the center of that.
Amen. And you know, it's the truth, the way, the truth, and the life. What I hear these days, have you heard this? Have you noticed? I'm sure your listeners have noticed this. The trendy thing out there right now is to say his truth, her truth. You speak your truth. This is my truth. Stand in her truth. And I'm like, wait a minute. I'm old enough to know that's not how grammar works, you know. For decades, for now thousands of years, we've never used the word truth with a relative pronoun in front of it. It's always the, right? The definite article, the.
Right. I mean, you remember when we were pastoring up in Weaverville, California. The pastor told me when I presented the Sabbath message, he said, well, that's your truth. I have my truth, you have your truth. And I said, sir, the Bible doesn't back up 2 truths. There's no such thing as 2 truths. It's either scriptural or it's not scriptural.
Amen.
And people say, well, that's your truth, I have my truth. And, you know, that has happened to really push out the word truth. But your ministry, Belt of Truth, has really done a lot here and has been on a beautiful, stable platform at 3ABN. And just kind of talk about how do you know, you come up with some very you're like me in a lot of sense, not identifying on the same platforms of everything, but you have a teacher background. Talk about that, because that has to that has to play a role in your research.
Well, I was a college student. I loved history. I loved political science and social sciences. And I thought, well, there's nothing you can do with that but teach.
Okay.
And I can't. Here's a secret maybe nobody's ever heard. Your listening audience might hear this for the first time. I was deathly afraid of public speaking, of standing up, a speech class. Like,
unbelievable.
I was about ready to quit college before speech class. Because I didn't want it to.
What
am I going to do with history anyway? I'm driving delivery truck. I like driving, listening to things. I'll just forget about this college thing. And that's not to say everybody's got to go to college. But for me, the Lord wanted me in this college course to study history, to begin teaching it. And it wasn't until I got to that speech class, I got to the speech class and was cured of all the fears of it. Because the speech teacher just said, talk about something you're interested in talking about. You know, don't make it a speech. It's not all formal. Just get up there and just, like you're at, at lunch with a friend. Something that you could talk for 10 minutes straight on and just do it.
Sounds like Toastmasters.
Yeah, say that again.
It sounds like Toastmasters.
Oh, then maybe that's where this professor got that from.
Yeah.
But yeah, so anyway, I went into teaching history from 2003 to 2011, taught history, government, economics,
nice.
and then came into an understanding of Bible truth and prophecy that I had not had previously.
Wow.
Okay.
And I was all excited about the Bible, and can I teach Bible? Can I teach Bible?
Yes.
And there was an opening at a local Christian academy,
yes.
and I said, can I move away from teaching at the public school where I am teaching history? I want to teach for you guys. I want to teach Bible.
Wonderful.
And the principal said, well, do you have a Bible degree? I said, no, I don't. Oh, I'm sorry, you won't be able to apply then. Well, then the conference, the folks that help organize the churches and the schools, they said, you know what, give him a shot. We could offer a provisional certificate. Good. So I was able to move into teaching Bible, which was the delight and joy of my life to do that full time. But it was at that point that I saw how much of the media issue was a problem in our young people. And I'd seen it from 2003. It was building and building and building. But by the time we got to about 2011, 12, 13, that was when everything was starting to burst open.
Right.
And so I started doing talks with my young people about media in the classroom.
Yes.
And I called it Media on the Brain. It's just like a curriculum. We're canceling the curriculum for 2 weeks to talk about media issues. And then the local churches and conference said, hey, can you do this for camp meeting? I'll tell you something. After having just finished a prophecy series, it was so affirming to hear what some of the people who said who came through that series. They had a little video. Folks can see this if they want to get the video. They can hear what people say. Just contact me at beltoftruthministries@gmail.com, and I'll send you this video. And it was an interview of a couple. And how do you feel about this series? What did you experience? What were you expecting? How was it different? And they said, we were expecting that the speaker would, share a Bible text and then give a bunch of his thoughts. But he said, what the speaker did was let the Bible explain the Bible. And I said, that's exactly what folks are going to experience in your seminar, because we're all reading off the same biblical script. I mean, it's Bible truth, so it's not some manufactured concoction of some man's opinion. There's enough of that out there. Prophecy gurus and all their weirdnesses. We just let the Bible speak for itself. So I hope folks will partake of that.
Wow, wow. Thank you. Evangelist, pastor. Now, are you a pastor?
No.
Okay, I just want to make sure I just added that in there. But good to have you here, Scott. Now, there's a word.
You've got to share.
He's got to
share his story.
Okay, share that story.
Okay, so when our sister was singing so beautifully a few minutes ago, No More Night, I was reminded of hearing that exact song in Ireland with an academy of young people and their choir. So I was the chaplain on the trip, and the school took these young people to Ireland, and we toured different locations and sang the beautiful songs of the gospel of Christ in Catholic cathedrals, singing In Christ Alone, my hope is found.
Wow.
He is my light, my strength, my song, my cornerstone, my solid ground, firm through the fiercest drought and storm. Thank you. And the kids, this is on the media topic, okay? They were not allowed to have their phones on the trip. Now, they were not told this until like a few days before the trip. Everybody signed up, everybody's done their fundraising, and by the way, now we're going to tell you, and they just about flipped their lid. This is the gravest injustice ever known to man. We must have our phones on the trip. And they said, nope, we're holding firm.
That's right.
And, okay, hemming and hawing. You've got your withdrawal symptoms. By the way, I literally just this past weekend talked to a guy who's a current assistant dean. He says, when we take the young people out right now, into the wilderness, into the camp out in the woods, and there's no phones. He says that the symptoms are evident within the first day or two: depression, irritability, and literally the shakes.
Wow.
That I did not see. It's gotten worse since I was a teacher.
Oh, it's an addiction.
Wow.
It's an addiction. It's gotten worse. But these young people at the end,
yeah,
it was so interesting because I had already started Media on the Brain with them.
Yeah.
And so they didn't want to say this, but we had the big circle powwow at the end, like, how did the Lord bless? We saw miracles. We believe angels were singing with us at one point because some of the key singers had laryngitis and were not able to sing, but it was as beautiful as ever. And so they had all these wonderful things. But the most common thing they said, the most frequent mentioned thing in the circle, reflecting on this trip together, was, we're so glad that we weren't allowed to have our phones here.
Ah.
Wow.
I don't want to admit this in front of Mr. Ritsema, but we're so glad we didn't have our phones because we connected with each other.
Oh.
We were fully human, in my terminology, how to be human again.
Right.
Folks who've seen Digital Disconnect are familiar with that terminology.
Yes.
So I thought that would be an encouraging story that, in 5 days of being out in the woods outside of Los Angeles, fifth graders are brought into the camps in a secular study. Within 5 days, their emotional intelligence is starting to come back.
What?
Yes.
Yeah. That's
because
in Digital
they
Disconnect.
have to do something that the phone doesn't allow them to do. Think.
And talk to family and friends.
Oh,
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many stories like people go on vacation. I saw a holiday family movie once, and when they got up to the mountains, I forgot Colorado, all the snow, and as soon as they entered the cabin, they said, "Hey, Dad, what's the password to the Wi-Fi?" He said, "There is no Wi-Fi." So what are we going to do for the next week? He said, "Could we talk to each other?"
Well, there's a novel concept.
Yeah.
And that is something that's really lacking in a lot of circles.
Yeah, it sure
But
is.
you said depression.
Yeah. Depression is, it rose 60% in just 6 years, from 2010 to 2016. So right when the smartphone, the social media, the ever-present, ubiquitous use of these devices started taking place, within 6 years, you saw a 60% rise among teenage depression. And that's not just people seeking mental health help, those who are being diagnosed, because that might be, a variable that people are seeking it more, or it's more accepted and there's more help for that. But no, this was objective data where they were surveying people using the diagnostic criteria, but using the surveys same way year in and year out, 60% rise in depression. But you take people off social media for 1 week, or you take them down to 30 minutes a day,
Right.
You find a 33% drop in depression in 1 week. Young adults, college students, was the study done in Denmark on that. No social media for 1 week, 36% drop in depression for young adults. And then there's Victoria Dunkley. I'm repeating Digital Disconnect, but just the truncated version of some of these key points. She, in her book, Reset Your Child's Brain, explains that after 3 weeks of zero media, children and adolescents who've been already diagnosed with mental health conditions, from anxiety to depression to ADHD to all of them, 80% of her patients have the majority of their symptoms disappear in 3 weeks.
What?
Isn't that wonderful? That's good news.
It is good news.
Oh, I mean...
Tell about the time when someone went on the train.
Oh, this
story.
literally happened. This is we were living in California at the time. They talked about an attempted robbery on a train in Oakland, California. The guy got on board on BART and announced, "This is a stick-up on the way people on the way to work." Nobody responded. He said,
"What?
This is a holdup."
Everybody's on their phone.
Nobody responded.
Wow.
He got off the next stop. Nobody paid him any attention.
Interesting.
Because their phones had their full attention. Now that story ended in a good way.
Yeah.
And somebody obviously paid attention, but the majority of people didn't respond because they were on their phones. And so we were in Thailand too, and they've done something. It's really interesting in Thailand. Where were we in Thailand? Anyway, and we were in the subway, which is the elevated train station. What they've done is they've actually put movable glass windows that close when the train is not there.
Bangkok.
In Bangkok, Thailand. And it opens when the train arrives, because people, I took a picture of the platform and everybody was on a phone looking down. And they've had people walk into the tracks unaware of the fact that the train was coming. So they literally put these glass things that open up when the train arrives and closes when the train is not there. Wow. So you're right on target with the digital disconnect. More people need to learn how to not let the smartphone be smarter than they are.
Yeah.